Hi, I am SHERI Castle. I'm a lifelong North Carolinian. I grew up in the mountains of North Carolina in Watauga County near Boone, which is why when Kelly asked me if I wanted to do something for 10 for 10 to help the flood victims up there, I'm like, you better believe it, because so many of my good dear friends and some family members got walloped by the storms. I'm happy to read. And for those of you that don't already have a place that you would like to donate and contribute, I'd like to suggest the Community Foundation of Western North Carolina. That is cfwnc.org. They do all kinds of good work, and I'm sure they would appreciate your help. So what I'm going to read are a couple of things today. The first is an essay that I wrote for the Bitter Southerner several years ago about the 7 essentials of Southern cuisine. And here we go. I have never written anything that is more likely to get me run off. It's the Bitter Southerner's fault. They asked me to come up with a list of 5 essential Southern dishes that show our culinary DNA. Well, that's impossible, so I came up with 7. 7 seems to be the sweet spot on lists of definitives, such as the 7 deadly sins, the 7 wonders of the world, and the 7 dwarfs. Of course, 7 is inadequate as well, as would be 700 or 7,000. No cuisine or culture has countable or cookable definitive points of origin. There is no Lucy in the culinary anthropology of the South, and even if there were, her fossilized bones would not be found wearing an apron with handwritten recipes tucked in the pocket. Southern cuisine is evolutionary, which will shock and disappoint the creationists who believe it sprung up fully formed and ever fixed. Authentic Southern cooking is as diverse and multicultural as the regions in the South and the families who live there. Southern cooks have always creatively drawn upon the mix of cultures that compose the South, starting with Native Americans, Europeans, and Africans. Sure, Southerners tend to like what Grandma made, but those grandmas did not come from the same place, so they didn't cook the same ways. And even when presented with the same ingredients, they did not make the same thing. If what we see as Southern depends on where we stand, then what we eat as Southern depends on who is stirring the pot. We must strive to understand, acknowledge, and respect all contributions and culinary cornerstones of what came collectively to be known as Southern cuisine, past and future, more fully and accurately. We must. The original Southern cooks were Native Americans who hunted, gathered, and cultivated our indigenous foods. Everything else was added because someone couldn't imagine life without it and found a way to cook it, or something as similar as they could muster and scrounge. New foodways arrived in the South with each wave of newcomers, whether they came of their own volition or through the most punishing of circumstances. People tried to bring a little of what they had, or what they knew, and what they anticipated they would need in the most unknown and foreign of places. One of the surest and most soothing ways to get our bearings in a new place is to cook and eat something we recognize and find familiar, something that tastes of home. When we can't go home to eat, we eat to go home. A universal Southern dish is more often a universal Southern concept. Each community or family can have its own convictions, and each is damn sure that their way is the best. But go 50 miles in any direction, and there will be another set of equally heartfelt convictions that its version is better. A bite of a dish in each place is a culinary GPS. One taste, and you know where you are. Context and pride of place are as crucial to the integrity and authenticity of a Southern dish as any recipe or cast iron skillet. If there's no there there, it will never taste right. Southern food is evocative. It makes Southerners talk because it makes us remember. Before we tell you how a thing tastes, we need to tell you how it makes us feel and what it reminds us of. We cannot tell of the food without telling of the people who made it for us and why and how well they did or didn't do. Southern is on the tip of our tongues. This is not to say that all Southern food memories are good, because, of course, not all Southern food and cooking are good. On the other hand, some Southern meals are so exalted that it is surely what the angels eat on Sunday. Whether good or bad, our memories, our food memories, are hard to shake. There is no more tenacious nostalgia. One bite of food or one whiff of an aroma from our past is swift transport to somewhere else. The persuasion of a food memory is association, not accuracy. Memories are rarely drawn to scale. Now, that said, I gave a lot of thought to what I picked for my list. I attempted to show that the core of Southern food is agrarian, resourceful, and homemade. Pretty fried chicken or barbecue might be the homecoming queen riding in the parade, but the family farm built her float. Now, even if there were an adequate list of quintessential Southern recipes, telling Southerners how to cook these dishes, especially the ones they grew up eating, is perilous and ill-advised. It's like telling someone how to pick a spouse. You know, there are just too many variables, and there is no accounting for taste. Now, you hate my list? Good. Get in the kitchen, sharpen your pencil, and make your own list. Think about what you would lift up as your personal plate of truth. As Bruce Springsteen, who is not a Southern boy, but he's got some good ideas, once said, "God have mercy on a man who doubts what he is sure of." Now, to close this opening, let me turn to words from our beloved John Edgerton, the most insightful scholar and champion of Southern food that any of us will ever know. And if we're lucky, we actually knew him. John said, "In practically every good and lasting memory any Southerner holds, of family and friends, of home and countryside, of school and church, of joyful and even solemn occasions, food is there, working through all the senses to leave a powerful and permanent impression." Okay, on that note, I'm going to read one more little thing. This was something I wrote for Southern Living magazine well over 10 years ago. They wanted me to say something about the food of memory and remembering people through food, and this little thing popped in my mind, sat down, just banged it out, and it has resonated with readers lo these years later. Not a year goes by that I don't get feedback from someone who has read it and said thank you for saying it. So I'm going to say it for you now. It is called Comfort and Joy. A new baby is born, a loved one passes on, a family is forever reshaped. It is possible to take comfort. You can carry it in your hands, in a casserole dish. In times of upheaval, a casserole is reassuringly familiar. This meal asks no more of the beleaguered than to peel back the foil and put it on a serving plate. When welcoming a new baby, a casserole gives the joyous yet exhausted parents a glimpse of family meals yet to come. During bereavement, a comforting casserole offers a moment of respite and a chance to recall easier days. The day of my adored grandmother's funeral was filled with equal parts of immeasurable love and unspeakable loss. The family returned to her house to find the kitchen brimming with homemade food brought by the scores of friends and neighbors that a well-lived life in a small Southern town can garner. I lifted lids until I found my favorite casserole, the type my grandmother often made for me. It was chunky with tender chicken, creamy from a can of soup, and crowned with buttered cracker crumbs. I didn't need to look to know that the kind, generous cook had put her name on the bottom of the dish, written on masking tape. I spooned some up and found a quiet spot in the house where I could sit cross-legged on the floor with my then toddler daughter in my lap. One bowl and one spoon for the two of us. It was the only moment all day that made a lick of sense. Overwhelmed people deserve home cooking. Homemade conveys heartfelt. When words don't come easy, a homemade casserole says plenty. It says, I understand that your normal life has come to a complete stop for a few days. So I'm going to pause mine long enough to make you something good to eat. A reliable casserole can deliver comfort and joy, but it's not the food so much as the gesture of genuine compassion. Casserole unto others as you would have them casserole unto you.